This is The Weekly Set, an official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com.
I wish I was the monster you think I am.
You have come here to beseech me?
Yes, for your soul.
Madness can be a medicine for the modern world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today we are doing episode 256. This is our Lost Season 6 discussion. This is the end of our Lost discussion because we went through an episode a day for, 119 days? I think
About
it was
that. I wasn't keeping track.
Episodes. So basically 119 days ago we started this journey and we're ending it here. This is a show that had already ended by the time we had started, work on this podcast. So when we started episode 1 of the podcast, Lost was like years in the rearview mirror already at that point. But it's something that had always come up in our discussion. We'd constantly be talking about Lost. We'd be talking about some other show. We'd talk about character development, and then we'd talk about how that related to something in Lost. And it was such a huge part, one of the most influential shows on this podcast. Like I'd say Lost, Twin Peaks, and The Magicians, and Game of Thrones are probably the most important shows to this podcast. There's some others that we could, go back and forth on or something, maybe Peaky Blinders or something, but like Lost was the biggest one, and that was a show that was over before we even started the podcast. So I wanted to say up front, it was really fun going on this adventure with you, Will. So thank you for going on this Lost re-adventure with me.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I was happy to do it, because it's funny because I have like so much good memories of Lost, but there's like so much of it that time has eroded away in my memory, so it was good to like get caught up and get like refreshed on stuff.
Oh yeah, there's things that we've talked about it before, like I forgot how funny Lost could be.
Yes.
It's just something you don't think about. Like you're like, oh yeah, it's got a few funny characters, but you don't there are some laugh out loud moments in Lost,
You tend to remember all the drama.
Yeah.
More than the comedy.
The drama or the big like what the fuck moments,
like there's stuff like in my memories that like got mixed up. Like I remembered Saeed dying on the show from getting shot in the stomach. And it's like, oh no, that happened at the end of season 5, and that wasn't what killed Saeed.
Well,
but
in a way it did.
In a way it did, yeah. But that was just like my memory of things, so a lot of stuff got mixed up in my head too.
Yeah, that's what's cool about doing like a rewatch is you can kind of like recontextualize things with cause there's two sides to it. One is that, there's things that you've forgotten and you've reshaped in your head. It's kind of like watching Empire Strikes Back again after and you're like, oh, wow, that line of dialogue was different than I remembered it. It's like slightly different,
Right.
There's like those things like that like are kind of like surprising to you. Like, oh, I got this wrong. Like this is wrong in my memory because memory is, inaccurate. So you realize that as you watch, you're like, oh wow, there's certain things that I didn't, think right. The other thing is that, and this is a reason why I think a lot of people that don't like Lost or that liked Lost but then had issues with it towards the end should rewatch it, is because when you go in without those expectations, when you already know that certain answers that you want you're not going to get, it changes the way you watch the show because you're not watching it going like they better tell me this, because you already know they don't. And so it allows you to just kind of be more present in the character drama. And I think people that had issues with the final season, if they rewatched it, they might actually find themselves pleasantly surprised by the show. Not just the beginning like it was before, but all the way through, because they're not going to care that they're not going to get some mystery answer because they already know they don't.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, when I look over the series, the whole mystery element and stuff isn't even what the show is about in the end.
Yeah, that's just fun. That's just fun stuff to get you into the character story.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff. Although the lore genuinely is a mess. Like, it's a Frankenstein's monster of patchwork ideas that are just like tied together by like these threads, and it doesn't really work in the end. So none of the lore actually works out in the end, but that's fine because it's Lost is about the character drama more than the actual like. But I know like a lot of people are pissed off about that, but it's like especially when you get to the finale, you realize more so than ever, and in the most unironic way, Lost genuinely is about the friends you made along the way.
Yeah, that's like a big meme joke, but it really is the definition of that. Like in like a very not, I don't want to say genuine. What's the right word? Sincere. In the most sincere way possible. That's what Lost really is about. And honestly, I love that. I'm walking away from it. I think maybe even liking it more than I did before because I'm watching it. I am walking away going like, man, I was like, say for example, the series finale, I was bawling.
The series finale to me was beautiful.
People hate that because it's the culmination of everything they didn't like about season 6. But to me, it's the culmination of that character story. And oh god, I was bawling through that episode. Like, when characters are getting their memories back and stuff, I was like, tears were just rolling down my face.
Yeah, I was bawling and stuff, especially at the end. Like, I get it. Like people think like the purgatory concept is kind of stupid, but that's not the point. It's just like, I get like, it's purgatory. Yeah, that's stupid. But it's the fact that it's purgatory isn't even the point. The purgatory is just a vehicle to get all these characters together and to kind of like give them the proper send off.
It's ultimate closure.
They deserve. Yeah, it's the ultimate closure. It's just, it doesn't matter that it's purgatory or not. They could have said like, they could have them all meet at a bar or something. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's, it's like, that's not the point of it. The point is that it's closure. It's celebrating these characters and like really hammering home the idea that, and the whole point of the purgatory thing was to hammer home the idea that the whole point of the show was these characters and how they were changed not just by the island but by each other, and that
how important they are to each other.
Yeah, how important they are to each other. That they're linked for eternity.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, that's like I was bawling several episodes throughout the end of this season in particular. And here's the funny thing. So I when I'm looking at back on this season now, I'm looking at the end of this season, and I'm like, oh man, when Jin and Sun died, and when this happened, and that, and I'm like, oh my, I cried so much watching. I was choked up constantly watching like the last couple episodes, and then immediately upon finishing the series finale for the second time, I'm back into that same feeling of like a post-show depression that I don't think I've ever had on a rewatch. Like,
what?
I get a post-show depression when I finish the show, but not on a rewatch. But I got it again.
It's funny because I felt that. I felt that post-show depression. I felt like, oh my god, it's over.
Yeah, like come on, just some more. Give me one more season.
even though I felt like, in general, I felt season 6 was pretty dumb, but like they nailed that ending. I don't care what anybody says. Like the rest of the season, could have been pure garbage, but they nailed that ending. Like especially towards the end. Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. It's kind of funny because I look back on the final season of Lost now after this rewatch, and it's all the recent stuff. That's all I'm thinking about is like, is the way it ended. But then I look back at kind of some of the big threads from the beginning of the season, and I'm like, Dogen and the temple and shit, and I'm like, that was pointless. And
Dogen and the temple was pointless.
The whole infected storyline was something I never liked, and even from like season 1, I wasn't into that.
They ruined Saeed for like the majority of the freaking season. Like, they turned Saeed into a fucking zombie, and then only towards the end, when they needed Saeed to like sacrifice himself, did they like have him snap out of it? But
I think they actually, I think they redeemed it a little little bit before that, and it wasn't Saeed himself, it was something Hurley said. Where somebody said like, oh, I think Sawyer was talking to him and told Hurley like, oh, Saeed's gone, he's with him now, he's gone to the dark side or something, and like Hurley's like, haven't you seen Star Wars? Like, haven't you seen the movies? Don't you know you can always come back from the dark side? That's like the entire point. You can always come back, and like Hurley made that comment, and I'm like, I wish more characters were talking about that, and I wish that was more, I wish when they were doing the whole infected storyline that it was more ambiguous. Yeah. Like, are they tainted or are they not aspect? Because that's a storyline thing that always bothers me. Like, it bothered me in Full Metal Alchemist when you have the villains that are just like, oh, they're born evil. It's like, I don't believe in that shit.
Yeah, like if it was more ambiguous, but Saeed immediately just like, he kills Dogen, he kills Dogen's translator, then he immediately like just becomes like fucking Smoke Monster Locke's like yes man. You know, and it's like for like the entire season, and it's and he even like at one point he even says, I have like no emotions now, and it's like, okay, so you're a robot. That's great.
See, and it's like, they could have done something far more interesting, which is they could have made it that yes, he didn't have emotions, all this stuff was happening, but then played on the idea that it wasn't that his emotions were gone, but that the experience he went through like dulled them, and that he needed to fight to hold on to that stuff, and that's kind of what happened at the very end. But I wish that was something that was hinted at before.
I think maybe that was the intention, but it doesn't come across the way, the way it's written.
Yeah, like I said, at the end, it works. Like, even though it feels like a complete 180, wait, I thought he was completely corrupted. It's like, no, it works, particularly because of the comment Hurley made about, like, it's never too late to come back from the dark side.
Yeah, in the end it works, but it's like, it's a little too late. Also, it's kind of funny, at the end, like, Sun and Jin dying, obviously, was super emotional scene. Like, I was crying. I was like, no, how could this happen? Right? So that's totally sad. I get it, right? But like Saeed died, like in like the same scene, right? So when they get to the beach, like Jack, Kate, and Sawyer and Hurley get to the beach, basically like Kate asks, where's Sun and Jin? And like, then the realization dawns on them that Sun and Jin didn't make it. And, they start crying, Jack starts crying. I'm like, Saeed died too.
They did address Saeed at a certain point. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said something, and I think Jack said like, there is no Saeed or something. Like, like he's gone,
Right. Yeah, but they addressed it, but like, you did get like that more. I just thought that was kind of jarring. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I definitely feel that even though like I'd never wanted Lost to end, as like this rewatch was coming up, I'm like, oh god, we're almost done. I don't want it to be over. Even though I was feeling that, at the same time, looking back, like I think they really could have tightened up.
They really could.
They could have tightened up the last season.
They
could have removed almost all the temple stuff. It would have been better.
Yeah. I also was never a fan of Smoke Monster Locke. Of essentially, even though it's not really Locke, but essentially turning Locke into like the main villain of the show. I was like, oh, come on. They really didn't have to like kill off Locke and just to turn him into a smoke monster. That was like one of my favorite characters on the show, and I was never a big fan of that. And this rewatch didn't make me a fan of that.
I liked it, but I feel like there were issues with it. Like, it's kind of like the whole thing, like I said about like Saeed and the whole infected thing.
Yeah.
How like it could have worked if they had given some more nuance to it. I feel the same way about the whole like Smoke Monster Locke thing. I think they're not for his character, because I think that the only way it works for him is if he is a completely different person. He's not Locke.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way that works. But I think there could have been more nuance in characters' reactions to that.
Yeah.
There's characters are shocked when they see him, but there isn't like nuance. Like, I think there should have been a few moments of like them being kind of nauseated at the idea of seeing Locke's face being controlled by somebody else,
For the most part, they just accept it. Like, Sawyer just like, even without being told, just says, oh, I know you're not Locke. And then it's like basically, but I don't give a shit either. So let's go.
Yeah. I think there could have been more nuance in the reaction to it. Like, and I don't like necessarily mean like that they're shocked or surprised or whatever by that. I mean more in the sense that like they should have difficulty dealing with it.
Yeah, they should.
You know, like it should be something that's hard for them to do because they're, you know, like what if you saw the face of somebody that at one point you cared about and somebody else was wearing it. Somebody that's questionable, you know.
So somebody else is not only wearing that face, but is doing terrible stuff in the image of that person.
It would be hard on you, like emotionally, to see that happen.
I mean, I get what they were going for. I guess like at the end of the show, they kind of wanted it to be like Jack versus Locke, like because that was like the big conflict they had set up at the beginning of the show. Like it was always like Jack and Locke were always at odds. So I guess they kind of had like this vision of the end of the show just being Jack versus Locke, the ultimate
man
battle.
of science versus man of faith.
Yeah, man of science versus man of faith.
But by that point, they'd switched roles, which is a little interesting.
Jack is like the man of... Yeah, that is interesting because this is the season where Jack becomes the man of faith, right?
Yeah.
And the smoke monster, not Locke, but the smoke monster is like the man of science, right?
Even though he has all this mythical aura around him, he himself, like that's not something he chose. And he himself is like, why does any of this make sense? Why can't I leave the island? This is stupid. Why can't I just go? And he seems like Jack, when Jack and Locke were arguing at the end of season 4 about like, you know, when like Locke killed like Naomi, you know? And
it's like he tells Sawyer, there's nothing special about this island. This island doesn't need protecting.
Yeah.
It's an island, is what he says.
And that's basically what Jack was like in season 4, where he's like, we're getting off the island. And Locke's like, you're meant to be here. It's important that you're here. And Jack's like, none of this matters. None of this is important. We're gonna go. And then now you're seeing,
and this
even though
season,
it's not Locke, it's a smoke monster. You're seeing a complete reversal.
Yeah, this season you're seeing a complete reversal. You're seeing like the smoke monster is trying to convince Jack to leave.
Yeah.
You know, Jack is like, well, you can go, but I'm staying.
Yeah.
You know, Jack is like, I'm meant to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete reversal for Jack's character, which is interesting because it shows like how much Jack has evolved through, you know, to that point.
Yeah. And it kind of gives a context. We were talking, I think, when we were talking about the last season, season 5, about Jack taking like this back seat and kind of like being like a follower rather than a leader, and kind of like, and with, when you apply like the context of what's happening in this season, it kind of makes sense. Like Jack always was in control of his fate, or always felt like he was in control of his fate. And when that was challenged, he became like aggressively against the idea of letting kind of fate take the steering wheel, you know?
Yes.
And then when he got off the island and it kind of achieved his goal, like everything he wanted, he got off the island, he got Kate off the island, he got Curly off the island, they're off the island. He can go back to his life now. He realized that his life was like meaningless now. Like none of it mattered to him. And then he had to go through like kind of a journey of self-discovery, I guess is the best way to put it. And part of that was being like a follower rather than a leader. And he ended up being a leader at the end. Like he died a leader.
So
but he had to go through a path as a follower before he could become a leader.
So what do you make of this? Because I just remembered an inconsistency with the show. Mm-hmm. So you know how and Smokemon and Jack challenged at some point this season, Jack challenges a smoke monster and basically flat out asks him, you know, like, when I saw my dead father walking around, was that you? And Smoke Monster said, yes, that was me. You know, and basically like I was trying to help you. I've always been trying to help you. You know, that's what the Smoke Monster tells Jack, right? So remember, like, I think it's season 4 it's during one of the flash forwards when Jack sees like his father sitting in the lobby in the hospital. What the fuck was that? Because that wasn't the Smoke Monster, because Smoke Monster can't leave the island. So what was that?
I think there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. 2 possible solutions to the whole that you're bringing up. One is that it's not ever 100% the smoke monster or his father. Like sometimes it could be one, sometimes it could be another.
Right.
Like there could be different entities. One could be like Jacob reaching out to Jack.
Well, we know it wasn't Jacob because we never saw proof that Jacob could even do something like that or take other forms. Like,
but that doesn't mean it wasn't him. That just means that we never saw that. Like, but it could be the will of the island. It could be the fact that Jack's dad was on the island and they have like there's weird things with properties with dead people. It could be Jack just straight up having a hallucination.
The only property we know with dead people is like the smoke monster can assume the form of dead people on the island.
That's not the only thing because Michael appeared in the final season.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Like the spirits, I guess the spirits like of dead people like exist on the island, or at least people who died.
And then there's Hurley's ability to talk to dead people is completely unrelated to the smoke monster or that.
Right.
And then Miles' ability to read dead people is completely different from even that. So
right.
Like there's all sorts of weird stuff going on with dead people. So I don't think it necessarily means that 100% of the times we saw Christian Shepherd that was the smoke monster. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that the smoke monster could leave the island in a way, kind of like astral plane way, you know, to influence people, not necessarily to actually set foot off the island or to leave completely, but that he could cause influence. Maybe Jack is constantly drunk at that point and he's sleep deprived and that makes him more vulnerable and that allows like the smoke monster to kind of like connect to him or something. So there's multiple ways of looking at it. Like I don't see it necessarily as like a flaw. It's just something that's not explained that could be a flaw, but like we just don't know. It isn't fully addressed. And I'm like in a case of something like that, I'm pretty fine with it. Like it doesn't bother me, but you know, it could be so many different things.
It doesn't bother me, but it's just something I remembered. I thought it'd be fun to point it out and like get your opinions and theories on it because it's always interesting to hear the different theories. Like one of the joys of watching Lost when it was brand new and coming out was listening to theories and speculation on what was going on.
I spent as much time talking about Lost and discussing it on forums and stuff as I did actually watching it, you know, or more. So yeah, definitely. I agree with you 100% there. It's like, and I think that I think the better mysteries in Lost are the ones where there's some room for interpretation.
Right.
Where there's some room to go, it could be this or it could be
I think there's a lot of things that's best left without an explanation because I feel like every time like they tried to explain a mystery or something,
you mean like across the sea?
Yes, and it was leading me into like the elephant in the room. But yeah, the answers tended to be lackluster. And yes, that's Across the Sea, the worst episode of season 6. And it's the worst episode precisely because it shines a spotlight on the series' biggest flaw, which is its lore and its mysteries and trying to provide answers to it, and it just doesn't work out.
Well, it's kind of like Damon Lindelof, like recreating the very sin that he detested about the Star Wars prequels.
Right. But I always maintained that it wasn't because like the Force was explained. It's because like the Force didn't have an explanation baked into it when it was created. So like George Lucas like came up with midi-chlorians after the fact to try to explain, and it just sounds stupid because now you're trying to like bake on an explanation to something like, you know, and I feel like in a lot of ways Across the Sea is the same thing. They come up with like this magic, I guess like this magic like light in like a cave. Like I guess there's like a pool of water that's like stopped up, and if that water drains, but that's shit that they just came up with. Like it was not baked into the lore of the show. It wasn't part of the series from like day one.
And we ended up getting the cave with the light, and I think it would have been better if we hadn't had an introduction to it beforehand.
Right.
If like in the moment in the finale they came upon that, it would be like, what the fuck is that? Like what's going on with that? It would be kind of more interesting. But the fact that they addressed it beforehand and let us know, once we get to it, it kind of loses all its mysticism. Then it becomes less interesting.
I remember when I said like I was confused by season 6, I think this was the episode that caused that confusion for me. Because when I watched it, I just left the original time I watched this, I just left the episode completely confused about everything. Like they answered like a bunch of questions, but I was just like, what's this about a cave? And I guess like the smoke monster was a regular person that just like he got thrown into like the magic cave and became the smoke monster. Like, okay. Like, I was like, what is even happening?
I do kind of like the vagueness of Jacob's magic system in this.
Yeah.
Which is the idea that he creates rules, but that it doesn't seem like he can create any rule he wants. It seems like there's like an unspoken math going on in the background. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that we're privy to. So it's not like we know, oh, he's using this many mana points to create this rule or something. It's not like that. It's like every rule he makes has to have like a reverse side to it.
Right.
Like their mother did, where she made it like they couldn't hurt each other. Well, it's like Jacob can't hurt him, but he can't hurt Jacob. Like, they have to go together, you know?
Right.
And so I like that kind of a magic system, the idea of rules, and I like the dynamic of Jacob and his brother with his brother, the man in black, who we never get like a name for. Like, early in, one of the only good things I thought was about Cross the Sea was the parallel they made to Jacob eventually having the role of creating rules, was to have the man in black be somebody who instinctively knew rules.
Yeah.
Like, he found the game and he knew how to play.
Right.
And it's like, well, how do you know how to play? I just know.
He's like, I just know.
He knows the rules. So like, Jacob would create a rule, the man in black would have to abide by that rule, but he didn't have to explain to the man in black what the rule he created was. The man in black knew.
No. And
I thought that was interesting.
It's interesting. He knew, but he'd always find a loophole. He'd always find a way around that rule. Like, the rule where like they couldn't hurt each other. Well, he just got somebody else to kill Jacob for him.
It's kind of like a what do you call it in games when like in video games when people like find exploits? Yeah, it's kind of like exploits.
It's kind of like exploits. Yeah,
it's the magic system of Lost is like an exploit basically. It's like there's rules established and then there's somebody trying to subvert the rules.
Yeah, and that's all the smoke monster is trying to do is subvert the rules, right?
And it all comes back to Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's lawful versus unlawful.
The rule says nobody can leave the island. Well, Smoke Monster wants to leave the island, so he's doing all this stuff so that he can leave. He's figured out a way he could leave the island. He's figured out a way he could break the rules, and he's gonna do it,
Yeah, I like that aspect, and I also like that it's vague, that it's not perfect. Cause they addressed this in the last season too, with the whole like, everybody has to come back for them to get back to the island thing, It's like, and the way they did things like, Locke has to be a surrogate for Jack's father, and Saeed has to be in handcuffs because it's a surrogate for Kate being in handcuffs. And Hurley needs to bring a guitar, or a guitar case, because it's a surrogate for Charlie having a guitar on the plane. So like, there's like a vagueness to it, and they weren't able to perfectly recreate the plane crash, but it's like they did enough to meet a certain threshold. And I think that's interesting. I think that's kind of the magic system of the show.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting magic system if you really think about it. It's the idea of like, there's a threshold, and if you want to manipulate things to reach a threshold, you can do that.
Well, Smoke Monster tells them that they all need to leave with him in order for them him to be able to successfully leave the island.
Leave or die, as we find out, yeah.
Yeah, but we find out that that's actually bullshit. What he really needs to do is, he killed Jacob, but since we find out this season that 6 of the survivors, basically our main cast are like candidates to replace Jacob.
He can't touch them, yeah.
So yeah, he can't touch them because they're candidates, but because they have the ability to become the new Jacob and to essentially continue the rule of not letting him leave the island, he has to kill them so that rule is gone and nobody else can instigate it and he can be free.
Yeah.
So we find out that not only did he have to kill Jacob to leave, he has to kill all of Jacob's candidates to make sure that there's nobody there to hold him in check.
The Man in Black is like a speed runner, and he tries to find the exploits in the games to use to open up his past. Like,
yes,
and Jacob's like a mod.
And Jacob's like a mod. And he's like a speed runner, yeah, because instead of hunting down the candidates and killing them one by one, he just tries to trick them all into getting into a small space together and tries to kill them off in one shot.
Yeah, but he doesn't even kill them. It's the idea is he creates a scenario in which Sawyer ends up killing them.
Well, yeah, because he can't directly harm them. He needs to trick them into doing it themselves.
Yeah, which I think is, it was an interesting thing the first time I watched it, but looking back on it, I'm kind of even more intrigued by the idea of like, I like that it's vague. I like that it's like, that it seems a little loose.
And then
it seems like there's wiggle room where you could either exploit it or...
And again, we know he can't directly hurt them because even after the sub explosion, when he realizes that there's still people who survived the sub, who got off the sub and survived, he tries to enlist Ben to basically kill them for him, he tries to get Ben to do the same thing with the rest of the survivors that he had Ben do with Jacob.
Yeah.
And so, but by that point, it's too late because Jack accepts the role of the new Jacob. Like Jacob basically appears before all of them and basically lays it out. Although it's funny because like Jacob's like, I'll answer all your questions, and then just gives like the most vague answers ever. It's like, okay, didn't really learn anything. But that's fine. That's the show in a nutshell. But
and then he said, and then my ashes are going to burn away and I'll be gone because I need to go over to America and start fucking with these Winchester brothers.
Yeah. He's like, I gotta start fucking with these Winchesters, so I gotta peace out really quick. But basically, after he's done giving his speech, he's like, basically, like, they asked him, like, who's gonna be, like, who are you gonna pick? And he's like, I'm not gonna pick anybody. He's like, I didn't get a chance to pick for myself, so I'm gonna give you the chance to choose, because I never had the chance to choose this.
And I think that works, too, because Jacob's kind of idea, when they say, what if none of us pick it? And he's just like, he's not like, well, one of you has to. He's just like, well, then we all die, or,
Yeah, he's like,
he kind of takes that laissez-faire kind of approach of like, I did my part. If the world ends, then so be it.
Yeah,
I did everything I could to stop it, and now it's up to you guys to make the choices to lead forward past that. And if you don't, then that's fine too.
I mean, one of the biggest things we find out about Jacob is that he's not perfect. He's not Jesus Christ. He's not flawless. He is as human and flawed as the rest of the characters on the show, and he is prone to making bad decisions. He is prone to being selfish or petty, That's the one thing about his character, he can do things that seem counter to what you would expect of, a perfect, friendly deity.
Well, even in religious mythos, God, creates man in his own image. So the idea is that, that man's imperfections reflect God's vision of himself, kind of, or something, And in the same sense, that's what you could say about Jacob with what he's doing, is that he picked people that were imperfect, because they kind of reflected himself. He saw a bit of himself in all of these people.
Yeah, he saw a bit of himself in all these people, he says. And basically his whole thing was my time is over. I never wanted the job in the first place, so I'm not going to impose it on any of you. He's like, I'm not going to impose anything on any of you, but if none of you takes the job, then, the smoke monster wins. He gets to run rampant and do whatever the hell he wants, and that's obviously not good, but it's like you said, he's like, if that's what happens, and that happens, I've done everything I could.
And Jacob's all the more interesting for that he isn't this perfect deity-like figure. And I think that that's good. I like that he's wizened by his role on the island, but he's still a person. He's not, he's still imperfect. And I like that the way that plays out, and it even reflects when you look back on, certain things, things that he allowed to happen, cruelties that he allowed to happen. And it's not because he's some all-powerful deity that can stop everything. It's like he has to keep this careful balance of things.
Well,
and he just doesn't want to get involved in the messy details.
One of the most interesting episodes of the season is the Richard episode, where we figure out Richard's backstory. And when you first saw the Black Pearl, did you expect to meet a living person who was from that ship?
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did. Which is one of the ways Lost can surprise, right?
Yeah.
Because we find out.
I mean, for that very nature, when they were talking about the Black Pearl in the first season, did you expect that it was going to be a boat, like a Spanish galleon, in the middle of a fucking jungle?
Yeah. No, you didn't. Yeah, you're right. You did. Yeah. So, like, basically we find out, and, you know, to be honest, I suspected this as soon as it's revealed that Richard is immortal. You know, basically, I you know, that it's easier to point the wheels and say, I bet he was from the Black Pearl. We find out, yeah, Richard is indeed from the Black Pearl. He has been on the island that long. And one of the first things that happens is the smoke monster, or Jacob's brother, tries to recruit Richard to kill Jacob. This is one of his attempts to get somebody to kill Jacob for him. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we know he's been attempting this for a long time, you know, trying to get somebody to do this for him. The fact that it takes him so long to actually convince somebody to do it, I don't know what that says about the smoke monster's abilities in, you know, in convincing people. But basically, Richard goes to Jacob, and basically Jacob is able to convince Richard that he's not the bad guy and that the smoke monster is the bad guy. And what's interesting is we learn a little bit more about Jacob in this episode, because Jacob talks about, like, he has this bet going on with the smoke monster where, like, he says he brings people to the island and to see what they're made of, to see, like Jacob has this bet with the smoke monster that Jacob's saying people are inherently good, and people are inherently good, and the smoke monster is like, no, people are inherently selfish and evil. There's nothing good about them. And so it's this kind of like thing with, like, them where, like, Jacob's bringing people to the island to try and, like, prove the smoke monster wrong. And so, but most of the times people are just like, yeah, people are like the smoke monster says. They end up, like, betraying each other, killing each other, backstabbing, you know, all the stuff the smoke monster says. The smoke monster points to that and says, see, I'm right. And Jacob's just like, yeah, well, you know, eventually I'll bring somebody to the island who will prove you wrong, you know. And upon learning this, Richard asked the obvious question, and it's like, well, if the people you bring to the island end up, like, being so bad, why don't you, like, step in and, like, try to help them, like, be good, you know, or to tell them, you know, what they should be doing. And Jacob just says, I don't get involved. That would spoil the whole thing. Like, Jacob's like,
well, the smoke monster is. The smoke monster is involved.
Yeah. And Richard's like, well, yeah, the smoke monster is involved. He's very involved. The smoke monster came to me and told me to kill you. Like, you know, it's like he's very involved. He's like, yeah, Richard is kind of like telling Jacob, you know, like, yeah, your whole stance of, like, not getting involved is kind of dumb. and Jacob is just like, well, then maybe you, and Jacob's like, well, you might have a point, but I still don't want to get involved or do anything. So, like, instead I'm going to have you be my advisor and you're going to help these people.
Mm-hmm. I think
in my place.
I think it fits into Jacob to do that. I think it fits into his character to be that way, because he's not a social person. He's not, you know, like, he doesn't know how to relate to most people and to get these things across. He's not good at that. As we said, he's human. He's not like a perfect deity. And I think that that's where he falls into, is that he's afraid of, you know, tampering. He's already tampering with people's lives, and he's afraid of how much he should do and how much he can do without, like, kind of, you know, taking away people's free will or something. And that is kind of something I found more acceptable in the rewatch than I did the first time I watched it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was like I had a kind of, I think I understood Jacob more than I did before. So yeah, that kind of works for me a little bit where it didn't before, but yeah, I mean, this season is basically the Jacob versus Man in Black season, you know, which is funny because, you know, Jacob died in the last season.
Yeah. But Jacob appears to Hurley. Jacob actually doesn't appear too much in this season, to be honest, even though his shadow looms large over it.
He has a pretty big role in 2 big episodes in the season. Yeah. And then he's got, like, a smaller role after that.
You can count on, like, one hand the number of times he appears in, like, season 6.
I don't know, because he kind of showed up in every character's flashbacks too. Remember?
That was at the end of season 5.
Oh, was that? Yeah, it was. Okay.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't show up too much. He was busy on Supernatural.
Yeah, he was busy he was busy doing like 2 shows at once. That's probably why you didn't see more of him this season. They had to write around that. It makes sense. But
I think that kind of works though too. I think one of the biggest sins the show could have made is to have too much Jacob in it. I kind of like that Jacob was this mysterious, enigmatic name that you heard. I think starting in like season 2 is when you first heard him address. And that it went all the way, you didn't even see him until the end of season 5. And then he's just kind of here and there every so often in the show and still very enigmatic. I think that worked to its benefit.
yes.
Yeah, so trying to think of other things to kind of address about the show. I think I kind of covered most of what I wanted to, which is to kind of separate the beginning of the season and some of the stupid plot lines like the Dogen and Temple stuff and the infected storyline.
Yeah,
to separate that from the emotional wallops that come kind of at the end of the season.
Yes.
It was kind of like the main thing I wanted to do.
Overall, I felt like they nailed the landing. Lost had maybe not the best, but like one of the best finales, in my opinion. I totally agree with you. The music, it's so good. I thought for the most part, like, didn't address this, but I thought for the most part, the Flash Sideways were kind of stupid. You know, it was kind of pointless having these storylines go in. You know, I get like the sentiment at the end, like it had like, obviously like the conclusion to it was amazing, but it's like the rest of it, it's kind of like, these storylines don't really matter. Like Jack's problems with his son doesn't exist.
No, I think all that does matter though, because Jack's biggest flaw, like his biggest character flaw, the thing that he struggled with through the entire series had to do with his relationship with his father.
Yeah.
And that by making Jack a father, this is like a way that Jack can learn to let go of his resentments about his own father, is to understand, because he never was a father. So he had to understand what it meant to be a father in order to let go of his resentments to his father. Okay. So like, I think Jack's like a perfect example of why that matters.
I guess I didn't get that message.
I was talking to my mom about that when we were finishing the episode, because she asked me something. I said, hold off till the end, then I'll explain. But she was asking about like why Jack was struggling to accept his memories, where everybody else basically like they touched somebody once and it just came all flooding back, and it's like they were the person they were on the island before, you know? And she said, why is Jack had like a moment like that with Locke and then like kind of bit it back and struggled against it and stuff. And I was saying, I'm like, cause Jack, more than any other character, has had trouble letting go. Like he couldn't let go. And so his relationship with his son, that's what was important, is that it was about him learning to let go of kind of his resentments towards his father, and everything else is him letting go so that he could leave with all of these people that, you know, are the most important people in his life, that he was able to kind of let go of all his resentments and all of his problems so that he could just leave with them. But he had the biggest struggle to that point. Like he had the hardest time letting go. And that's something he wasn't able to accomplish in life at all, where I think a lot of characters kind of started to get there before their end, you know? But Jack really wasn't able to. He just he fell into, what he thought he was destined to do. And that was like he wasn't able to ever fully address his issues. But I think everybody fit into an interesting path in that same way. I think Jack's the best example of that. But I mean, like, another really good one is Sawyer, is the idea of like, and he even addressed it when he was on a date and it was asked like why he chose to become a police officer, and he said he reached a certain point in his life where he was either going to become a cop or a crook, and so he decided to become a cop, you know. And when you look at his backstory and kind of the things that influenced him, you could very much see that that's the kind of path somebody like him would come through. They'd go through life and they'd feel this yearning for justice, and that yearning would either lead them towards becoming like a law enforcement officer or going about it in his own way to get it done, and kind of selling his soul to do it, which is kind of what he did by becoming a con man himself and taking on the name of the person he despised, you know? And so you had like a parallel there. Some of the stuff wasn't as well addressed like that. Like, I don't think they really did a good job with Kate of showing like an opposing view to her storyline.
No.
You know, in her flash forwards.
I mean, like I said, a lot of it was like Flash Sideways. A lot of it was like kind of pointless. It was like, I don't know. It was like they were playing like with like the concept of, oh, this is an alternate timeline. This is like, and then they're like, psych, it's purgatory, which I think rubbed people the wrong way, which rubbed me the wrong way at the time, because I totally bought into the idea that this was an alternate universe, and and was getting invested in it. And then when it was like, oh, it's purgatory, I'm like, I guess I don't, that did on the first viewing sour the finale for me a bit. And I think a lot of the vitriol towards the finale probably comes from that. Probably was a mistake for them to do that kind of bait and switch with that. Because I do feel like a lot of people, when they talk about like how much they hate the finale, it's probably coming from anger from that.
It was a mistake in the metagame and in dealing with fans. It was a mistake. In the actual storytelling process, I'm glad they weren't forced out of doing what they did. I'm glad they went the path they did. Because if they hadn't done the path they did, I don't think they would have come to a satisfying character story conclusion that they did. So
Right.
I'm glad they took that path. I just don't think they handled like fan anticipation and reaction in the best way outside of the show, like in talking about the show and doing interviews and addressing aspects of the show. I don't think they necessarily did a bad job.
But I mean, overall, season 6, kind of a goofy season, not really that great. Amazing ending. They did right by Lost with the finale. There's probably nothing about the finale I would personally change, even like at the end.
I'd change splitting it into 2 episodes. You watched the uncut one, right?
Yes, I watched it as 1 episode.
Man,
so
it feels awkward watching it as 2 episodes. Like all of the 2-hour season premieres and stuff, or season finales, were divided into 2 episodes in our rewatch. But all of those felt like they could be separate episodes.
I think they
Whereas
were
like
separate.
this one,
Yeah.
no, when they aired like straight through, like 1 episode.
Yeah, but I think they were obviously like filmed as 2 episodes, even if they aired as like a 2-hour.
But they didn't do
You could
like
tell.
they didn't do like a second title card when they originally aired.
Right. But
Like,
you
so
could tell watching them they were filmed as 2 episodes.
Kind of, but like I don't know if I agree with you, because like when I watched it originally in 2 hours, like it felt like an epic 2-hour story. And the one time in which where it just did not divide correctly was the series finale. And I find that interesting that on Hulu they had the option to watch the uncut episode or the 2 together, and they didn't do that for any of the other season finales.
Yeah, it's the only season finale where they give you the option to watch it as uncut, and I
just don't think it works well as 2 episodes. Like it's kind of broken. Like, well, I could tell you right off, because you watched it straight through, that the cutoff point is when Jack does that flying punch against Locke.
Oh, seriously?
That's where the first episode ends. And then basically Locke's dead within like the first 2 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, that's awkward as hell.
So that's weird.
That's
not
like,
only that, but it's just like, it felt very weird. Like they forced in that little Lost title card kind of again on the second part, and it just felt like it just didn't belong there. Like,
I was looking at the episode listings on Hulu, and I was kind of debating to myself, am I going to do like the 2 episodes, or am I going to just watch the uncut finale? And ultimately I decided it's probably more satisfying if I watch it uncut, like as 1 episode, and I made the right choice. It sounds like
you made the right choice as far as like watching a satisfying thing, but I'm glad I did it the way I did it, simply because I'd already seen the uncut. I watched it live, I watched it when it aired, the original as an uncut 2-part episode.
Right.
So like I never saw it cut into 2 separate episodes. So
I don't think
it was interesting to see that.
I don't think it's supposed to be cut into 2 episodes.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be, because
it's
of
not
TV syndication,
It's not cut into 2 episodes on like when I bought the season on the Microsoft store.
It's syndication. That's what it is.
It's not separated into 2 episodes on the official season.
It's because when a local network buys the rights to the show to air it in syndication, they have like a time slot, and they don't want to work out for reruns like a 2-hour slot for the show.
Yeah,
so they're going to
true.
do like 1-hour episodes. So that's why it's cut. It's cut to air in syndication on TV. That's why it's cut into 2 episodes like that. And I completely agree. It was not meant to be 2 episodes. I don't think any of the finales were meant to be 2 episodes, but this one in particular just does not work well as 2 episodes. It works well as 1 episode.
They obviously didn't want the end to be divided.
Yes. But the end still had to be divided for syndication. It's just part of the business.
Anyway, just no point in watching it as 2 episodes.
Here's one last question for you, Will. Did you watch the epilogue?
Of course I did. You told me to watch it. I watched it.
What do you think? Had you seen it before, first off?
No. So
Yes,
I never
this is your
watched
first
this
time seeing
episode, this epilogue, because this epilogue was only included on the DVD set.
Mhm.
I never bought the DVD set, although I wanted to. It's not on the season on the Microsoft Store.
It's not on Hulu. It's not,
Not on Hulu. It never aired on TV. So
you basically have to find a rip on YouTube.
Yes, which is incredibly easy because like there's a bunch of them apparently. Copyright people are sleeping on this, but
Yeah, I don't think they're that concerned. It's way past the peak of DVD sales for the series.
But yeah, this was interesting because I kind of expected it to be like, it's interesting because this is called The Man in Charge, and it's an epilogue for Lost, and I expected it to be like this cute, like, throwaway thing, like, maybe, like, it addresses some questions, and for the most part it is, but it becomes something more than that. It's interesting, because I didn't expect it to be anything but, like, this cute, like, little thing. And it starts out this way, because you have Michael Emerson, obviously, Ben Linus, he's visiting this Dharma, like, warehouse, like, off the island. Apparently, like, this answers the big mystery. I guess people needed an answer to this, like where the supply drops are coming from.
Yeah.
And if the Dharma Initiative is not around, why are there still supply drops? And I guess this answers the question about supply drops because, like, these people were in charge of doing that and they had no idea the Dharma Initiative was shut down.
Yeah.
But Ben's there on Hurley's behalf to shut them down officially. Right. And before that, like, Ben says, like, there's 2 workers there, and Ben says, like, each of them gets to have one question answered. Again, the answers aren't very interesting. Like one of them asks, like, what was the deal with the polar bears? And I thought the Dharma Initiative brought them to the island was a sufficient enough answer for that. But
well, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge that polar bears react to, like, the Earth's electromagnetic fields, you know? Everybody kind of knows that about polar bears, so.
Yeah.
With an island with a huge electromagnetic source, you'd figure, well, that's probably why they brought them to the island. You know?
Right, yeah. Like, I was like thinking, the Dharma Initiative brought the polar bears to the island, that's why they were there. I thought that was a sufficient enough answer, but apparently, like, we needed more explanation for that, and I was just like, okay, whatever.
These were, like, the contents of these questions were heavily based on, like, fans that wanted answers to these after the series finale had aired.
Right, yeah. And I get that. I just thought it was kind of silly people, like, still needed that explained further.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, whatever.
I agree, but I thought it was a cute way of answering it.
Yeah, it was a cute way of answering. I liked it. I'm not saying it was bad. I liked it. But that whole first section of it is like, okay, it's cute. If it ended there, I'd be like, oh, that was a bit cute. But no, it actually does something interesting because after that, he goes and he visits Walt. We get Walt reintroduced, which Walt did not appear at all in the final season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which is sad because it is like this big celebration. Season 6 was this big celebration of the show and all the characters in it. And there are some notable absences, like Echo doesn't show up at all.
That's the actor.
Yep, that's the actor. But
the actor didn't want to be on that show.
Yeah, which I had guessed, you know, like, so there are some notable absences, but one of the biggest missing in actions for the final season was Walt. And I loved that they rectified that by bringing Walt back with this. And basically, like Ben takes Walt, and Ben basically flat out tells Walt that he's special. Also, Ben apologizes to Walt for kidnapping him. Basically said that wasn't my best moment.
Yeah.
which
was my bad.
Yeah, he's like, whoops, my bad. But it was a fun character moment. But then Ben brings Walt outside of, like, because Walt's at, like, the mental institution Hurley was at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and basically, like, Walt's kind of, like, upset because, like nobody remembered him. Like, he said, like, he said he thought, like when they got off the island, like, they would visit him and stuff, and nobody's visited him or, like, tried to contact him. So he's kind of upset about that. And Ben basically takes him outside of the mental institution, and, like, there's, like, the VW van from the island, and in it
which
is
will now
Hurley.
be called the Hurley Mobile.
Yes, which will now be called the Hurley Mobile, and in it is Hurley, and Hurley, since Hurley's the new Jacob, by the way, we didn't address this, but Hurley ends up as the new Jacob at the end of the finale. In the finale, Hurley becomes a new Jacob.
Because Jack's dying, yeah.
Yeah, because Jack's dying. So Jack's role as the new Jacob is temporary, and Jack gives it to Hurley, even though Hurley doesn't want it. Hurley actually protests. Hurley's like, I don't want to be the new Jacob, damn it! And Jack is just like, no, you have to take this.
Yeah.
And Ben becomes Hurley's advisor. Ben takes on the Richard role.
Yeah, that was a cool moment too in the finale with like, you know, like after everything that Ben's done, after all the animosity between the groups and stuff, the way like Hurley was just like, would you help me?
Yeah, would you help me?
And Ben, just kind of like the shock on Ben's face when he hears that, you know? And like kind of Ben seeing that as kind of like a road to redemption, you know? I thought that was really a nice
moment. It's a nice moment, and it's also nice. It's a nice thing on Hurley's character because Hurley is not a vindictive person.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that earlier also when Hurley's talking to the ghost of Michael, you know, like Michael's the guy who killed Hurley's one true love, you know, and Hurley can't even like hold that against him, you know. Hurley's willing to forgive him for that.
Yeah.
You know, that's just who Hurley is. So Hurley's not the person to be like no, to go to Ben and be like, no, you're bad, I'm gonna hold that against you forever. Like, so Hurley is just like, yeah, cool, you could be like, yeah, and it goes back what he said about Saeed, people can return from the dark side. That's Hurley's philosophy, right? So that's basically his attitude towards Ben. It's like, well, yeah, like, but you can be a better person and you can help me out, you know? But back to the man in charge. So basically, I guess like one of the first thing Hurley does is like he recruits Walt, and Hurley basically tells Walt he has a job for him on the island, that the island's not done with him yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that ends like the man in charge, and I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I remember the first time I watched that, I thought I had all my closure on Lost, and then I watched that and I was like, I want more!
Yeah. Right.
I want like how Breaking Bad has Better Call Saul, that was kind of like, at least it originally pitched as like a lighter version of Breaking Bad, some of the same characters, but like more of a comedy. It didn't really end up being that, it ended up being like a gritty drama too, but like, that's kind of like what I now wanted from Lost at that point after watching that for the first time. Is like, that would be a cool kind of little adventure series as you watch like Hurley changing the island, you know? And I don't know, that it could have just overstayed its welcome and not been worth watching.
Yeah, it could have been stupid too. So
yeah.
It's probably best that they ended it there.
Yeah.
I did like one of the first things Hurley did in the finale when becoming Jacob, though, was he lifted he's like Hurley says something like, yeah, but like nobody can leave the island, and like Ben says, who says nobody can leave the island? That was the Jacob rule. You're the new man in charge. You make up the rules now.
Yeah.
And like Hurley's just like realizing it. He's like, yeah, because Hurley's like, yeah, but like even if my friends get on that plane, they can't leave. And Ben is like, who says they can't leave the island? That was the Jacob rule.
Yeah.
And so Hurley makes it so that Kate, Sawyer, Lapidus, fucking
Richard and Miles.
Yeah, Kate, Sawyer, Lapidus, Richard, and Miles can leave the island on that plane.
And Claire.
That is Hurley's first official act as the new Jacob, is to let them leave.
Mm-hmm. Which is like, you know, it would have been funny to see what Hurley's island would have looked like. Cause I just think it would have been a bunch of like poor cancer patients and stuff. And it would have been really just like having luau's. It'd be a bunch of like former cancer patients that are now all miraculously cured. And they're just having luau's every night.
Luau's and golf.
Yeah.
Because Hurley would be like, we need, this place is depressing. We need more fun.
And ranch dressing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That epilogue is like, it's fun at the end. Like the beginning part is kind of like a cute little call out to fans that wanted certain answers, and they did it in a kind of a cute little way. But yeah, the rest of it is about like what the island would look like under Hurley and what like the moves that he would make. And so, like I said, it's something that looked like it would have been really exciting to see like a new series that continued with that path, but it probably would have ended up overstaying as well. So it's just kind of a cool little hint towards that instead.
It's pretty cool, yeah. So I did end up liking the man in charge. It ended up, you know, it's nothing mind blowing, but it ended up being a little deeper than what I took it for. And it was a nice little epilogue to the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't hurt it, and it didn't, like, do anything radically crazy that, like, changed our perspectives on everything,
No, but it did fix a glaring flaw with the season 6, which was no Walt.
Yeah.
So it gave us closure. It gave us closure with Walt.
Yeah, that's one of the things we didn't have closure on, so that was kind of nice.
Yes.
That's pretty much it for our discussion. So we got to figure out what we're going to do for next week. I'm not going to put us on a deadline to figure that out right now as we're recording the end of the podcast.
No, we need to know right now. The time is ticking.
We'll keep in touch and figure out what we're going to do next week. The one problem with that is we can't really tell you what we're going to do next week because we don't have anything scheduled yet.
It'll be a surprise.
But, we'll have something next week.
It'll be a surprise. Maybe you'll like it or maybe you won't. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I'll hate it. I don't know.
All that's left to do is talk about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So on today, Monday, May 25th, Barkskins miniseries came to National Geographic. Wednesday, May 27th, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. returns to ABC. American Soul to BET, and Love Life to HBO Max, which premieres, I guess, tomorrow. I didn't realize our premieres on Wednesday, not tomorrow. I'm sorry.
Oh, and tomorrow's on 27th.
Yeah, I got that mixed up. It was my next entry, and I just thought next day. That's my bad. But yeah, I guess HBO Max is coming. Do you have HBO Now right now?
Yes, I have it through Hulu.
It apparently is going to just switch over.
Nice.
So you're going to have HBO Max. My hope is that we finally get some 4K HDR stuff. Then we could watch that dark episode of Game of Thrones and see things with HDR.
Ooh, HDR.
We can see stuff now. But there's a few, like, kind of originals that are going to be coming to HBO Max over that have already been announced, like a Saved by the Bell reunion and stuff like that. Those are, like, exclusive to HBO Max versus just, like, HBO shows that are also going to be on it. But Love Life looks like the first one that's going to launch with. On Thursday, May 28th, Dorohedoro comes to Netflix. It's kind of a long-awaited anime series. On Friday, May 29th, Central Park comes to Apple TV+. Rami returns to Hulu. And Space Force debuts on Netflix. So I'm excited about that. I'm really looking forward to that one. But I think May 29th is also when Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition comes out, so I might not rush through that series. On Sunday, May 31st, Quiz comes to AMC, the miniseries. On Tuesday, June 2nd, Dirty John, the Betty Broderick story comes to USA. Max comes to Hulu, and Fuller House returns for its final season on Netflix. On Thursday, June 4th, In My Skin comes to Hulu. On Friday, June 5th, Trackers to Cinemax. And lastly, on Monday, June 8th, LA's Finest to Spectrum. So that's what's coming up in the next week. Some of that stuff, maybe we'll talk about Space Force in a couple of weeks. Not next week, because we're not going to force ourselves to finish that whole series.
Oh, geez, no.
in less than a week, yeah, in like over a weekend or something. Yeah. But we might do that in a couple of weeks down the line or something.
You'll be disappointed if you ask me to do that.
Yeah. We might discuss it somewhere down the line in a couple of weeks, We've had time to watch it, if we're both into it. So, like I said, can't say anything about next week because even we don't know yet what we're going to be talking about next week. But you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Fox of Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Podcast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
It's been 6 days. We're all still waiting. Waiting for someone to come. But what if they don't? We have to stop waiting. We need to start figuring things out. It's time to start organizing. We need to figure out how we're going to survive here. Now I found water. Fresh water up in the valley. Take a group in at first light. If you don't want to come, then find another way to contribute. Last week, most of us were strangers. But we're all here now. And God knows how long we're going to be here. But if we can't live together, we're going to die alone.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to the Total Screen for the very best in genre television.